Wonderful. Thanks, Jeff. Well, thanks, everyone. I'm going to share my screen and okay, so hold on one second here. Sorry, just trying to get into presentation mode here.
See if you go back to view.
View. Well, I've lost my view here. Okay, here, view.
And then slideshow.
Slideshow, there you go. Thank you. Okay.
You're welcome.
Wonderful. So, hi, everyone. My name's Sue Wozniak. I am going to talk about using Pressbooks to create projects representing student voices. I do just want to say that if you have any questions during the session, I can't see chat, but please feel free to turn on your mic and ask questions. I think there's also time at the end to ask questions, but I don't mind your asking questions along the way. So feel free to just turn on your mic and ask them. So I am a faculty librarian. I'm going to talk today mostly about this project that I initiated at Lake Washington Institute of Technology, creating library books out of stories and art created by our students. A little bit about the history of it, how it developed, some of the benefits of it, the process. And then the thing I'm most excited about is that out of this process grew a regional group of other librarians and other staff who have started thinking about and enacting publishing projects at their own colleges, at their own institutions. So I'm also going to share the work that they're doing and talk about this group. Okay, so the book project I started started with recognizing a need for more books in our English language learning collection, the basic reader collection. This started because it's a pretty significant program on our campus. The program represents immigrant and refugee individuals. It has the largest number of students on the campus, and the students take a lot of classes, between 6 to 15 hours a week. There's 6 levels of classes, and it's also the strongest circulation of books that we have. So they really come in and check out our books. Now, when I started at LW Tech, their collection was quite small, and especially in the lower level books. So I started looking for books, realizing we had a gap in the collection. And I had a really hard time finding books that were at this level, that were not oriented to children, and that reflected the population of the diversity of our population. So recognizing this need, the biggest thing was, yes, the being not child-oriented and the lack of representation. So a lot of them were very Eurocentric, and I just felt like I wanted to see our students more represented in the books that we had. So speaking of the ELL program itself, besides the book collection, we also have, the library also still hosts, we used to be called Talk Time. So a speaking hour now it's called English Conversation Corner for immigrant and refugee, basically all of the English language learning people who are at our college who come weekly to, to have a chance to speak, have conversation with each other. We bring a topic each week. So we started this, in the library in collaboration with the international programs and the English and the basic education. It started to pick up steam, and first it was monthly, then it was bi-weekly. Now we're doing it weekly. And I just attending these speaking hours, hearing a lot of stories, I just thought, wouldn't it be great to just got a lot of inspiration from hearing these stories. And I thought, wouldn't it be great to bring some of these stories into our collection? And so I started to dream about, well, what if we created our own library books? So, but I didn't teach these students directly. I needed to work with, instructors to figure out how to do this. So I decided to build on existing relationships. There was one professor in the ELL program, David Fox, who was pretty involved in the talk time. He also would help me level the books and just, sort of started to build a relationship with him in general. And so I asked him about the project. What do you think about if we could, take some of these stories and record them and make a library book? And he said, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. So we started by just collecting the stories. He'd create assignments for the students talking about, personal topics. And he started collecting the stories and then, collected them on a shared drive. So I worked with him over several quarters to do this. Now, it was kind of slow going at first. While he created the assignments and helped, edit the stories, I provided the permissions and licensing instructions. So one of the things that we needed in order to publish the book was permissions from our students. And we also wanted to create an open license so that this could be, openly shared. So I, adapted the waiver of the college to include open licenses and provided instruction for David to provide to his students so they could learn about licenses, give them options of choose their own licenses. And so that's how the project began. So one thing I want to talk about a little bit is open pedagogy. I know Maggie just gave a great presentation on that. And I've also been a really strong enthusiast of open pedagogy. I really feel strongly about having, not only representation of voices, but seeing the engagement, seeing how much confidence it gives students to contribute to materials. And so already I was working on open pedagogy projects prior to this. But this project also provided the opportunity to teach about copyright licensing and then just the value of open materials in general. And I really liked giving the students, helping them understand the different licenses and giving them the agency to choose what type of license worked for them. Another thing that it really started to tap into was this idea of cultural humility, learning about other cultures, learning about others in general. This has been a strong value of the college. It's actually one of the college-wide learning outcomes. So one of these values that we want to have represented in all of our classes across all disciplines. So the topics of the stories, they applied to personal lives. The writing prompts have ranged from a person I admire, my neighborhood, a place in nature you enjoy. So all kinds of just, really giving students the opportunity to choose something that worked for them, something about their lives that they wanted to share. And so those have been some of the story topics. So once we started collecting stories and I had sort of this pile of them and I was reading them, and before I got to the place of figuring out how I was going to publish this as a book, it occurred to me that a lot of the ELL books have images and how engaging images are for both for storytelling, but also just for understanding and, understanding a different language, having another sense like an image. Does seem to really help. So at this point, I turned to the art department, Jason Sabatka, who's the head of the art department, and I had asked him about it, and he got really excited about the idea of creating an art project where art students would be assigned a story and then create some sort of either drawing or painting it turned into as well. To interpret the stories and create artwork from it. Again, this is another element of humility of art students reading the stories, trying to understand, and listening and responding with artwork. And I just wanted to read a quote from Jason that's from the first book in regard to the value of this cultural humility and interpretation between writing and art. In human evolution, images and gestures predated language. Communicating through drawing is core to the human experience. There's an honest beauty in these drawings, and the showcasing of many levels of past drawing experience and comfort levels in published work celebrates the power of drawing. My sincere desire with this project is that each drawing and language student sees their contribution as proof positive that their message and creativity is valued. Hopefully that value will foster a desire for lifelong creativity, an appreciation of humanities, and a love for their brothers and sisters. So I just thought that really captured well the value of this relationship between the art and the writing students. So I mentioned cultural humility is a strong value of the college. We also have a diversity and social justice requirement at the school now that in every program, students will need to take one DSJ course, and cultural humility is one aspect of a DSJ focus. And also just that the collaboration between writing and visual works is a long tradition throughout humanity. Art students creating visual response based on their own feelings and experiences. So I know I'm kind of honing this idea of cultural humility, but it's just really has become a big part of the value of it to me. So once I had a lot of writing and then artwork, now I had to figure out how to put it into a book. I have no experience in desktop publishing or really that sort of those skills and creativity to put a book together. We had no budget identified to pay for a book. I didn't know how to format it. I was thinking of the stability of a book for libraries, and then, so that they would last rather than just, printing things out and stapling them together. And I had no experience with desktop publishing. But fortunately, about this time, we were introduced to Pressbooks. So I had been attending conferences and watching Pressbooks. I was getting an idea of how easy it was to combine different types of works and create a really professional product with very little skill. I also really like that it has a Creative Commons licensing options, that you can choose your license for not only the whole book, but for every page. But it just seemed out of reach because we didn't identify the funding to pay for it. But fortunately, one of our math faculty used some grant money to get access to it in 2021. And that was just about the time I was ready to publish this. So we got access to Pressbooks, and that really enabled it. Then the following year, the SBCTC has funded us all to get access to it. For the future, we'll have to see. I think we have realized the value at our college, and so we hope to continue it with our, with funds we can identify in the near term. But I realize this is a challenge for a lot of institutions, so I think that's going to be kind of an ongoing conversation. Are we going to be able to continue to use Pressbooks? Are we going to need to look for another format? But for the moment, it really has turned out to be a very successful and easy to use platform. So I imported the stories, I integrated it with the art. And then I had a book. So the first book was an ebook. And then we then I also wanted to print it for the library. Printing directly from Pressbooks, the format doesn't come out in quite a print-friendly version. So then I identify lulu.com as a publishing platform, learned about through others creating books. Self-publishing platform is really inexpensive. You can import files into it. Again, give it the licensing. You can then also create a link to it that you can share publicly with others. And the books have really turned out to be about $3 to $4 per book. So it's been really inexpensive. The ebook version being available is excellent because then, we can share it widely. Students can share it widely. We all realize the value of that. But having the print version is really wonderful because we could have library books. We also have progressed to printing books for every student, everybody who participated in the project. And that seems to be a really nice thing. I feel really gives people a lot of confidence and, the value of seeing themselves published in a book and having the book itself. So the first book took a few years to get all of that together, collect the stories, find the art, figure out the publishing. By the second year, or by the second volume, or once the first book was published, really, I had no trouble selling the project again because, it just came out so well. The students were so happy, the faculty were so happy, the library was happy because we had these books. So, I was a little sheepish about asking faculty if they wanted to continue. A lot of enthusiasm, and then others and their other English teachers and other art teachers have become involved. So then we had the second volume in 2021-22, and the third volume we just had this year. So this year, I added 2 new elements to it, an interview and storytelling event. So the interview was bringing the art and writing students together in the library created some interview questions for them to get to know each other before they created their work. This was one of the benefits of being back in person and being out of the pandemic. And then after the book was published, we had a storytelling event. So the students came to the libraries, the writing students read their stories with the art projected overhead. That was really fun, gave students a lot of confidence. And so that has now become the annual process: interview, create the work, publish the book, and have a storytelling event. So these are the covers of the 3 books. And I don't know if I said this, but I through every slide that I've been showing, all the images that I'm using is artwork from these books. It's just been really fun. So just a few comments from the faculty. It was a pleasure to watch one student create written works and see how others could translate that into something visual. That's from Amber Chiosa, who's the art instructor who's worked on the book the 2nd and 3rd year. And then Kelly Cover-Tam, who's another ELL instructor. I was very excited to join this project, have my students contribute the resources available for beginning English language learners. The result is a collection of beautiful stories that students wrote to honor the important people in their lives. And then just some student comments. So one of these students, Mariana, from the storytelling event, just said, "I feel so proud to see my story published in a book." And then another student came up to me afterwards and said, "Thank you for letting us participate in this project. It is such an honor to take part in and share our stories." So anyway, it seems like it's been very positive for everyone. So project evolution, first volume took 2 years. Then we had the second volume. We had 3 new faculty, 3 new ELL faculty, 1 new art faculty who got on board. Then that's when we started using library funding. We identified a source in our library budget to print copies for every student. And this year, I just said we added the interview and storytelling event. So these are just some pictures from the storytelling event, from the students reading their stories. So the benefits I felt like from this project, the first is representation. So local stories, local cultures and stories represented in our collection, our students, seeing themselves. Storytelling, I think it's just inherently fun. It's so great to hear the voices. And really what really surprised me, I was excited about it anyway, but just to hear, and I knew all these stories so well, but to hear the students telling their own stories, reading it in front of everybody, it was really such a moving experience. And the dialogue between written and visual works with the cultural humility. Open pedagogy. This is something that's always been really important to me. As I say, I think just the confidence building, the value of students seeing themselves represented, the relevance that it adds both to the learning process and the materials, to see themselves, to hear their stories, the community building, just the process of students working together, building community between students, art and writing students who may never have interacted with each other, met each other. So kind of building those bridges across campus and departments. And then, of course, the library's relationship with all of these people and programs is really beneficial for us too. It strengthens our community. And then just the fun. I have to admit, this is the favorite part of my job. Every aspect of this is really a lot of fun. Challenges, of course, there are some challenges. The biggest one is just, I think, and it's in my discussions with the regional group that has formed from this, it's something that has kind of rung true, is just convincing others to participate. The barriers that are presented by just engaging faculty, staff, others at your institutions, and because this really needs to be a collaborative process, and everybody's so busy, convincing people the value of taking the time. That I think has been the hardest thing. For my project, timing the classes of matching up the students with writing and art for the collaboration, having the same number of students, that can sometimes be a challenge. Sometimes it, have to work between quarters to make that happen. Completion of student work, especially during the pandemic, there were a lot of work that was not being turned in. So I would, at the beginning of the quarter, I would think I had enough, of art and stories to match each other. And then in the end, I'd have to kind of reshuffle things because some of the work didn't come back. Finding a funding source for printing the book. Well, I do think that I'm sure that there are other good places to print from. Using Lulu was really wonderful, but it does cost some money. So finding some source for that. And then formatting of the book. Well, the Pressbooks comes out really well as an ebook. Once I brought it into the Lulu to print, I had to do a fair amount of reformatting of things, just some of the pagination and some of the quality of the images I had to play with a little bit. But once I got the process down for that also seems very doable. It just was a process that I had to account for time for to figure out the formatting. So I will say just some tips on engaging colleagues. I think building on existing relationships helps. Showing examples of books. So, our books are for sale, I think, or in either showing them an ebook or having a physical book in your hand and letting them look through it. Cascadia and Highline, they're also in the process of creating books. So when those books are done, also will be other examples to show. I just think once people see what that looks like in print, it seems, and even the ebook version, I think that can be convincing. Using existing assignments. So in none of these classes did an additional assignment have to be created. It was more about crafting the assignments that were there to fit something that would work well in a book. So it wasn't creating additional assignments. So in some ways, it shouldn't be a lot more work for the faculty or the students. Storytelling events, that's what, just having a storytelling event was very popular. So just mentioning the possibility of that. And then just to suggest collaborations that are specific to your campus, because, ELL and art are pretty prominent on our campus, but there may be other things on your campus that would be a better fit. And providing the licensing instruction, that was another thing that seemed to be a barrier for our faculty, was just, what kind of license do we give it? What about copyright and open licensing? I kind of know about those things, but it's vague and confusing. So, and I have materials that I'm happy to share. I have a whole Google Drive and Canvas with these materials that I have available to share if anybody wants to use my materials, either as is or adapting them. But just providing that instruction, I think, does really help. So this is my most fun part of the project now, which is this regional group that's formed. So I presented a couple of years ago at the WLA conference, and two librarians, Chelsea Nesvig from Cascadia UW Bothell and Deborah Moore from Highline, attended my presentation and came up to me, afterwards, and were really excited about the project, and they wanted to learn more. So we formed a group, and the idea of the group initially is, let's create a regional collection so that we can not only have the voices of these books from our students, but from, our population in the region, and have a regional ELL collection. So I've been working with those two. They both have projects in process, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But then we've had other people join us from Yakima Valley College and Clark College. Maggie, who just presented before this from Clark College, is one of the people from the group. So now it's kind of expanding beyond ELL to also include other disciplines, other topics. So that's all really exciting. I think it is a wonderful use of Pressbooks, especially while we all have free access to it. And we really are open to others joining us still. So you can always email me afterwards. I also have a form that I'm going to share later that you can fill out if you want to, just to share some project ideas. But this group is really very much active. We meet monthly, or, I guess this summer we're meeting a little bit more than that to just try to, help each other. So functions of the group, sharing ideas and getting feedback. It's really kind of an informal meeting that we have, but it's a lot about what's everybody working on, what problems do we have, getting feedback. And so, solving problems with, again, a lot of it is how to engage faculty and staff working in Pressbooks, some of the technical issues or other publishing platforms that people might be using. Providing encouragement to advocate for projects on your campus or at your institution. And really I'm really trying to hold this vision of a regional collection. So I work at a community technical college, but I love the idea of also, if we have people from public libraries, from other kinds of institutions, it doesn't just even have to be at a college. I just really love the idea of a collection of regional voices. So I'm really hoping others will want to get involved, and hoping this collection will continue to grow. So far, we have Highline and Cascadia colleges, where I mentioned they are working on the ELL. Maggie at Clark College is working with a faculty on creating a faculty guide and working in correctional institutions. And Leslie and Sam Falk, Leslie, I want to get her name right, Potts Henderson, I have it on the next slide. They are working on creating a book on the topic of passing. So I'm just going to go through those in a little more detail. So Deb Moore at Highline, she collaborated with faculty. And again, this idea that it takes time to get going with these projects. It took her, I don't know, maybe a year, several quarters to find somebody or people to work with who were interested, but then were willing to create the project on their class. She collected stories over spring quarter, and now she's working with an art faculty to create an art assignment in the fall. Chelsea at Cascadia UW-Bothell, she has been talking with people, and there's a lot of excitement, but nobody's actually agreed to it yet to create the assignment, but that's very much in process. She's getting more of a sense of how it can be slower to get these things going. And then Maggie Lynch, OER fellow at Clark College. So I've talked about representation of student voices, but it's also, it's also representing faculty voices. So she has a faculty member who is writing a guide on how to work in correctional institutions. Now she's using case studies, or she wants to use case studies, and the students in this case are incarcerated individuals. And so just, their personal stories. And I think that it brings up that there's just challenges with every kind of project. It's working in prisons. Access to those voices is difficult. One, she has delayed access to working in prisons since the pandemic. Much of the work that has gone on in prisons is we have less access to. And then there's permissions permissions are restricted for the use of, you can't publish something for somebody who is currently incarcerated. She can only use voices of those who were previously incarcerated. So these are the kinds of challenges that come up, but that's also why the group is really wonderful, because we can help each other talk through these things and, give some ideas. Leslie Potter Henderson, there's her name, and Sam Falk at Yakima College. So they have come up with this idea of passing, so representing stories from students. I think they're from English classes, but for people who are across different kinds of identities, hiding identities in the workplace that feel threatened. So things like gender, race, disabilities, economics, all kinds of areas, just what those experiences are of those students. So I'm really excited about this. I love the idea of this topic, and they're working with some faculty, are hoping to collect stories in the fall. So now at this point, I just wanted to take maybe 5 minutes to break into small groups and chat amongst yourselves with just some potential student publishing project ideas. Do you have a project you'd like to create? And then I also have this survey, and I'm going to put the link to it in the chat. Sorry, I have to get out of presentation mode here. Go back here. Here, I'm going to put the survey link in the chat. And this is, if you can share with me ideas you have, if you want to join our group, or if you just want to discuss project ideas, please take that survey and share it with me. But if we could just take a few minutes to get into small groups and share some ideas, and then we'll come back.
Okay, Sue, I've got breakout rooms. I was going to make 6 breakout rooms with 5 to 6 participants per room.
Wonderful. That sounds perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Hope you had some good discussions. And I wanted to, before the end of the meeting, put my email address into the chat so that you can contact me with any questions, any ideas. We'd love to hear. Would love to be in all of your discussions just now. Okay, so I'm just going to go back to my slideshow, and just a little bit left here. Okay, so yes, wanted to say my thanks to everybody who I've worked with so far, which is a lot of people, 5 ELL faculty, 2 art faculty, 170 students in all, and then the collective of the publishing project, Chelsea, Deborah, Maggie, Leslie, and Sam, and others who are joining. Again, I hope you all I hope people will want to join us, because it really is a lot of fun. As you can see, it's quite a collaboration. And then, yeah, I guess that is the end of the show. So here is my email address. So now I just wanted to see if anybody has any questions. Questions or thoughts?
I had a question, Sue.
Maggie?
I wonder, because I wonder how the process went to match an art student with a story. Did you do that matching? Do the students get to read all the stories and select which ones they want to illustrate? That's the first part. And the second part is, did the art students and the ELL student who were matched talk to each other at all during the process?
Good question. So the first question, the art instructor assigned a story to each. So they were assigned a story to each art student. So they were, handed a story. They didn't, they may have gone back and read the stories, but they didn't select them themselves. They were assigned a story. And I think it was pretty randomly done, that assigning. I think it was a lot more about like matching up the numbers. In fact, for some of the stories, there was more than one art student assigned. And so some of the stories have more than one image. And that's kind of interesting to see different interpretations. And then the second question, sorry, what was the second question? The interview. Yes. So that was, the first 2 years, the first 2 books, which was over more than 2 years, the students did not meet each other. And a lot of that time was during the pandemic. For the third book this year, I created an interview event where the writing and the art students came to the library. I created a list of interview questions. The teachers matched them up, and and they interviewed each other. And this was done prior to creating any of the work, either the stories or the art, just to kind of like informal, getting to know each other a little bit. And also because the art students are reading the stories, I wanted to have something going the other direction as well. So, the writing students had some idea of who these, just kind of like getting to know each other, not that it was one way, and also just to kind of, have some idea of who's going to be interpreting their work. Yeah. And sorry, your mic is off, I think, Maggie.
Sorry, I really like that. Thank you very much. I love that interview part.
Yeah, absolutely. It was so fun. Thank you.
So my question is regarding making books and publishing them and so on, is I personally have given up on purchasing printed books years ago.
Yeah.
I have lots of technical books in Kindle format on my phone, and they're available everywhere that I go. They're part of my library. I don't have to carry around books. Granted, in my collection of 300 books or so, some of it is obsolete, but gosh, my University of Washington differential equations book on occasion would be nice to have. Didn't exist then. And so I look at books as being something that if I go through the thrash of reading them in a class, I don't want to lose access to that book. I want to be able to have it after I leave an institution and so on. So I use PDFs. I recommend that my students use Kindle. I don't teach classes unless the books are available in PDF format or Kindle, or that I can ensure the long-term access to any material for my students because they're going to need it. So is Pressbooks, once you leave an institution or your college no longer funds Pressbooks, does that become a walled garden to you? You can't get access to the material that you put into Pressbooks?
Not at all. So the books that have been created will be accessible forever. So that's once they're created and they're published, you will have access to them, and you can still get back in and edit them and change them as well.
Yeah.
You have total control of it, but they won't disappear. The only thing that disappears is that once you stop paying for access to it, you can't create more books, or you can create more books, but you can't publish them. So that's anything that's already created, you will definitely continue to have access to. So that's really a wonderful thing about it.
And then the reader, are you reading the material as if it was coming from a web server? Is it webitized, or is it in some special format? Do you need a special reader to read the books?
But you don't need a special reader. It's just in the Pressbooks. It's just in the Pressbooks platform.
Okay, so it's from their website then.
Yes, it's right. It is, although the link is to your book at that point.
To your book.
But you can also,
Pressbooks is acting as the repository for your book.
That's true. But you can also download a PDF version if you'd rather have it as a PDF. So that's available.
Okay.
As well as other formats. Yeah, great question.
So I have a question. I love what you're doing with English language learners. And I think a big issue that a lot of our students or language acquisition students have is, people not understanding them, different ways that we as people who are monolinguistic or something like that might not understand how to adjust our home language to talk with other people from other cultures. And so I'm wondering a little bit about, is there an audiobook option where students talk about their experiences, that there's a chance to actually hear somebody speak? Is that something that could be put together in Pressbooks or no?
Does anybody here in the meeting who work with Pressbooks know the answer to that? I honestly don't. I thought that there was, I think you can attach audio files. Can you read? Yeah, you can embed audio files. Can the whole book be read as an audio book? But yeah, you can definitely embed audio files. So that's a great idea.
Thank
Absolutely.
you. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for the question. Any other questions or thoughts?
Well, I guess I was wondering if we have access at my college. But I see Ron just emailed me back. So apparently we do. So I'll talk to Jeff about that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, and just again, highly encourage use of Pressbooks, especially in, between now and November, when this year's subscription that's paid for by the SBCTC is still, it is still valid. It's really encourage people to make use of it in different
Only
ways.
till November?
In as far as I know, unless somehow funding is extended, or unless your college decides to purchase access to it. But you can also start a book now and you can finish it later.
Oh, good point.
As long as you start a book before then, and if you let me know if you want any help with that.
Yeah, we're going to be pushing faculty to create books, and all they have to do is log in, start a book, put a title on it, and save it. And then we can go back and build out the books later. And so if you just logged in there as a faculty member and titled it My Textbook, we can go back and edit that later. So I'll be sending out more information about that to our faculty at Clover Park.
Okay, great. So you can edit the title. That was my concern.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I did that this summer. I created, because I have at our school, we have a number of different things we're using Pressbooks for. Besides this project, we have the DSJ faculty guide that now comes out every year. We have a book that is showcasing work from the art show, the annual art show. I think we even have a couple others that are not coming to mind at the moment, but I created shells for five more years for each of those projects, just because I know that, I feel pretty certain that we're going to have a use for them. I don't know what the funding is going to do, but at least we can continue our existing projects that way. And that's exactly what I did. I just gave them all a title. So, but the titles are embedded in the URL. So it helps if you know what the title is going to be. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the more faculty we have, even just starting books on there, it's going to create a greater case for funding from the state. So
Absolutely. Yeah. Great. All right. Well, thank you for allowing me to talk about this project. And I really appreciate all of your questions and ideas.
Thank you, Sue. We really appreciate you and all the work that you've put into Pressbooks in your institution and elsewhere, and also your contributions to the OER community through that work. So thank you.
Wonderful. Good to work with you all.